A new report on America's air quality is offering a cloudy prognosis on the long-term health care of Americans forced to breathe in more pollution. The report from the American Lung Association says nearly half of Americans live under unhealthy levels of ozone erosion and pollutants. For tonight's interview, we are joined by Laura Kate Bender, an assistant vice president at the ALA, to discuss the state of air report. Laura Kate, this is an alarming headline. What does this report tell us?
Well, it tells us that too many people across the country are breathing air that could put their health at risk. That number, that almost half of the country is breathing unhealthy air, is actually a lot worse than last year's report.
It says half of the country. Do we draw a line down the middle, or how does that break down?
So the report looks at levels of ozone and particle pollution nationwide. And what we found this year was a couple trends. Number one, the wildfire smoke that came down from Canada in 2023 caused lots of poor air quality days for people across the East Coast and the Midwest. We also saw that extreme heat made ozone levels worse in Texas. That said, people all over the country are in places where there is unhealthy air to breathe.
All over the country. That is extremely alarming. So the current air quality in the country, how does it compare to before the passage of the Clean Air Act? That happened with much fanfare.
Yes, so here's the good news. The Clean Air Act has absolutely worked. It has made the air a lot cleaner. Since the act passed, the air pollution has gone down overall. The challenge is that over the last few years, we're starting to see it tick back up again, and that's because of climate change in part. Climate change is making some of those conditions for wildfires and extreme heat that drives ozone pollution worse for a lot of the country.
I'm just curious, before the Clean Air Act was passed, what if it were not? How bad would it have been today?
Really bad. The Clean Air Act has driven lots of reductions in air pollution. It's made cars and trucks cleaner. It's made power plants cleaner. It's cleaned up industry. We've made huge progress as a country thanks to the Clean Air Act and the standards that have required reductions in those emissions. And
then you started to touch on these recent rollbacks on environmental protections. How is that going to impact air pollution in your view?
Unfortunately, we see that everything that makes our air quality better is at risk. EPA is at risk, the agency that is protecting our health through staff cuts, funding cuts. The regulations that have cleaned up our air over time are at risk of being cut. If we see all those cuts become reality, it's going to have a real impact on people's health by making the air they breathe dirtier.
So people look at this, and it's a tough headline to digest. I mean, it's really ominous sounding, and the everyday person is wondering, what could I do in my own life to make things better, make sure we're getting clean air?
So everyone can take steps to safeguard their own health on days when the air quality is poor. They can visit airnow.gov, which is EPA's website, get their air quality forecast, and if they were planning on going for a run on an unhealthy air day outdoors, they might want to change that plan. People can take their own steps in their own lives to make their air quality better, like carpooling or taking public transportation. And people can be prepared for more wildfire smoke, more extreme heat. We have lots of resources at lung.org/SOTA.
I also wonder when you hear people say, plant a tree, that cleans up the air. Is that, it sounds simplistic, but does that apply here?
Tree planting is great, but the fact is, if you have a power plant spewing emissions or a diesel truck with exhaust pouring into the air, a tree is not going to be enough. We need these standards that require cleanup, and we need them to stay on the books.